I'm going to turn this over to Connie. Go for it.
Well, hi everyone. I hope you're doing well today and you've enjoyed the summit so far. And some of us have been working on broadband deployment for so long, and it's starting to actually happen. And if you've been driving around the Humboldt Bay area, you probably have been stopped on the road in Old Arcata Road or in Eureka or on Samoa Boulevard as we're putting in conduit for the upcoming fiber projects. And so, I woke up and I sort of was like, oh my gosh, we've been working on deployment so long, we really don't have a plan for how to use all of this broadband capacity that we're about to have. And we're about to have a lot of capacity. So, it was really, I wanted to have a conversation and a session around what do we do with the capacity? How do we recruit? How do we get folks ready? And, how do we as education leaders at Humboldt State University and College of the Redwoods bring in the right training programs in order to make sure that folks are really ready for the new economy? Because honest to God, we don't have the housing up here to just have people move in and take the jobs. So there's even more incentive to make sure that we're building what we need to build in terms of education and training opportunities. So I have some ideas of what to do with a big pipe that I could share with you, but really honestly, we have some amazing opportunities. And if you want me to launch into one, for example, we are right now talking to the companies about how we can put seismic equipment on the subsea cable, because the cables are going right through the Gorda Plate. And there is almost no place more active for earthquakes than our region. And so there's an opportunity to do all sorts of research on tsunamis and on earthquakes on both our terrestrial build for across 299 and on the subsea build. And so the good news is the companies have indicated that they are interested in participating in some research projects. Before this, during our lunch hour, I was talking to USGS about writing up what that might mean. And so I know Rob Holman's on here, and he's going to be one of my calls now that he's working at the planning at the Harbor District. And because if we can get a little plot of land out there, we can actually put some seismic equipment, maybe long term out there to do some major measuring that will put us in the league with Caltech for being able to help predict earthquakes and tsunamis. So that's just one major idea. Greg, you want to talk about the airport park a little?
Well, so yeah, it was interesting, and there is a question in the chat, and I'll address that as well. But we've been at this. I remember back when I first came back to Humboldt County, and I had I worked at a consulting firm, and we were really nationally doing our work, not locally, and how bad the bandwidth was because we didn't have a single fiber optic line coming here until the early 2000s. And so that when we had days like yesterday when it was rainy and windy, we couldn't even connect by phone outside the area, right? Because the microwave system would go down because of weather, and so you would get the all circuits are busy. And so we've come a long way, obviously, since then, where we had a microwave system 20 years ago, and now we have a fiber being built that's going inland, but also, of course, going to Asia. And so, yeah, it brings up a big question about what do we do now, and what can we do as economic developers to encourage business development around that. And then, Michael's question in the chat is how does what does all this deployment mean for benefits for the sort of average consumers? And those are great questions. And there is, Sean and others really do work on access issues, and Connie, of course, in the area. And so, it's so funny because I remember, early on our discussion is, oh, we have to get fiber here so we can attract technology businesses. Well, there's very few businesses now that don't rely upon technology. And it was interesting to me to be in a discussion about what the Google Fiber means to Asia, and how the I can't even remember the fractions of seconds of latency that it saves for data going in and out, how much that's worth to companies, which, is kind of beyond my my understanding. I'm not an engineer by any, a broadband engineer, and so but the other thing it really does, and this is what Andrew's to a certain extent with Andrew, is creates a huge another piece of our network that, as soon as we started finished with the first fiber, we started advocating for the second, that's the 36, and now we're looking at the third and the fourth. And so in terms of attraction, Andrew, one of the things we can do is not only that we can cut off the speed and drop latency and some of the other things that's worth money to companies, but we can also ensure them that we have a rigorous system, because they can lose millions if the system goes down. And so when we were talking to companies, and after the first fiber outages the day after Christmas, over 10 years ago, we started looking at how much money was lost from local businesses, and of course that it gets known in the industry, right? And so when United's network, when that first outage went, the United's network goes down, and United employees are borrowing customers' cell phones that still work, because not all some services stayed and some didn't, so they could call down to dispatch and figure out what the hell was going on. We knew we had a real problem. And when imaging that was in some of the stuff that was going on at the hospital had to be rerouted and everything, that because they couldn't get imaging. So those are, the primary benefit is you reduce the risk, right, to businesses, not to mention improve the service. So I think that's a real core thing. And so, my excitement is around, obviously many of I'm a bit of an airport enthusiast here. And I'm looking at opportunities to create a partnership between a private developer and the airport and the regional broadband purveyors, and saying, okay, we could build, because there's an basically undeveloped business park next to the airport, which will be adjacent or even have the fiber route running through it. And so in talking to companies that are technology based or technology dependent, you can say, listen, you can have a business, you can locate your business in this business park that's adjacent to an airport that also has an amazing infrastructure broadband wise, and you can look at the ocean outside your window. And then when you get done with work, you can go down to Clam Beach or walk the Hammond Trail or something like that. So all of a sudden it's like, wow, we got a trifecta. And in the past in Humboldt County, when we were talking about the benefits of doing business here, it was always like, oh, it's a great place to live, you'll feel happy. It's really hard to do business here. But overcome those barriers or put up with those barriers because you really like it here. Well, now we can say both. It's a beautiful place and we have a rigorous infrastructure. So and Sean talks about energy resilience. There's so much that this creates that's interrelated that I don't know that we fully even understand all of it now. And that's our next big challenge going forward, is trying to figure out all those pieces and how they fit together and how we maximize that. And of course, going to Michael's point, is how the people in Humboldt County also benefit from that. And so while we're talking about a lot of these big projects, Sean and Connie have been working on projects to bring robust broadband out to people in the hinterlands, southern Humboldt and eastern Humboldt and Hoopa and Mendocino County and Del Norte County. And I think that's important for all of those. And especially we learned that after the COVID thing where people are trying to learn at home. So that's just a couple thoughts I had.
So let me jump on some of the stuff that Sean's talking about in the chat and to answer Michael's point directly. So one of the amazing things about the consortia, and the first cable has landed, and that is the cable from Project Echo. Now, just let me say that it's landed on our beach and it still has to make it all the way across to Singapore. So we're still a couple of years out from having a lit cable, and then we're going to take the cable across 299. So, this is not just like any other infrastructure project. We're not done yet. We're just getting started. But one of the amazing things about Project Echo is that there are 3 partners in Project Echo: Facebook, Google, and a company called Trans-Pacific Networks. And Trans-Pacific Networks is offering for sale all of their third of the capacity. So anybody can purchase that service. Any local existing companies, any new companies can purchase that service. And on the 299 piece, as part of the 299 piece, they are going to dedicate fiber to every tribe in our region so that we will finally have some broadband equity in our community, and those tribes will be able to pick up that fiber and to serve their own communities and develop their own economic development opportunities. So so that is one of the things. So, and we were having a conversation with the companies that are building, and I said, are you putting enough fiber, extra fiber in every manhole so that if we can hook up other anchors as we build them? And the answer was yes. So they have really been working hard with the community. We provided them a list of I think it was 600 possible locations that might need connection to this fiber, and they are building the pathway to get to as many of those anchors as possible. The other piece is the Arcata data center, which is actually also the subsea cable landing site. We are working at HSU to get a part of a rack in that site. And what that means is that we will be able to hook up every single local provider, if they choose, into that site and create what's called a local internet exchange. And Sean could probably describe this better, but let me try. If you remember Katrina, one of the problems with Katrina was no one could talk to each other in the community because their connection point was outside of the community. So when you pick up your cell phone, you're calling somewhere outside of the community and the signal's got to bounce back to get to Greg Foster. Or when you're communicating with somebody over email, it goes far away and then comes back in to get to Stacy Atkins Salazar. So who just joined us. Hi, Stacy. So anyway, we, Madam Mayor, we are going to create a local internet exchange in Arcata, which will allow us to communicate to each other, will make our network resilient. So it will be better positioned for any emergencies or climate adaptation needs. So that's an exciting thing. And then also, Humboldt State will be partnering with Scenic, which is an education provider, will be able to interconnect the libraries and other users as well. So we'll create a network that is based in our region instead of based in San Francisco or somewhere else. And that will make us all much more resilient in the future. So I hope I answered that question. I think the other thing, Michael, I just want to say is that, we will have access, but what we choose to do with it will be up to us. but there will be tons of access to the pipe. And that's really where the conversation needs to go. I have not heard no from these folks, and I think I'm asking big questions of them, but I don't think I'm asking big questions because they're saying yes so easily. So I think as a community we need to have more conversations about what are the possibilities for the region, especially because we're going to be one of the only regions that has the nexus. Hopefully we're going to have additional green energy from the windmills, where we have plenty of water, and we are going to have communication capacity. So that is like the trifecta for building and economic development. And if you look at like what places like Austin built its network out based on water, that was what started attracting people to that community. So we have the trifecta coming. Okay, Greg, jump in.
I mentioned, some of the other work, and Sean and you are both very familiar with, some of what the state is doing now in terms of investment in last and middle and last mile kind of work in networks. What are the opportunities that we might have, or what have we done recently, and then what are some of the opportunities we might have going forward on some of that for all three of the counties, Humboldt, Del Norte, and Mendocino?
Here comes Sean. Let's let Sean in. Here we go. Sean, go for it.
Well, I was intentionally just listening to where folks were going and what you wanted to know, but I think what fascinates me in the recent developments that Connie that you talked about is those are all now privately funded. Basically, our region gave back a bunch of public funding for the 299 project, and it's now being done through private investment, right? So that's just a really fascinating shift and very unexpected. Ironically, at the same time, there's a huge flood of public funding happening from the federal level and the state level right now. So I kind of hate to turn away from the public funding at this moment. And I wonder if, I guess this is a question to you and Greg, is there more that we could be doing? I know local governments are stepping up, Arcata and Eureka in particular. Eureka is building their own fiber network now around the city, and we expect to see more and more of that. The funding is aligned for local communities to actually build their own. If you're in a community that isn't well served, there's now funding for you to build your own network. That's all new stuff. We've been so far ahead of the curve, it almost feels like now the curve is catching up to us.
Sure.
I just wonder what you think of that.
Okay, terrific. Let me just talk about that. So far there's been a little resistance and opposition, but we have gotten the permits for Project Echo. So there were some negotiations with the fishermen in order to do that. So it's fully permitted. so we don't have to worry about the opposition as much. 299 is our next permit. I do want to say on the public funding, the rules are still being written around that. And one of the, we talk about public-private partnerships, and this effort right now, Project Echo, is being led by private-public partnerships. So there are opportunities for us, and we are talking to the company about using our public funds to expand the network. So one of the ways we're potentially using our public funds is HSU building to Trinidad, to our marine lab in Trinidad, which as Greg mentioned earlier, sends us right up McKinleyville Central Avenue and past the airport and on our way to to Trinidad. So all, there are opportunities to interconnect with all of those businesses potentially as HSU uses public funding to help, to hook onto this private funding. We all need to, we're paying attention to the rules around, and I don't want to get too much into deployment, but we're paying attention to the rules around how to expand this. Now, let me also cover Southern Humboldt, because yes, we tend to talk about the Bay Area right now, but to Sean's point, there is going to be a lot of public funding to expand the network in those other areas. And there is talk of a new east-west line that the state of California is going to sponsor, which will interconnect to our line up here, but go all the way south, as maybe even as far as LA. That will allow all of those communities along Highway 101 and maybe even out to Shelter Cove and Whitethorn and Whale Gulch to interconnect, because all of a sudden those builds become easier to do, because all you have to do is get back to that main pipe. So it's, we were talking to the city of Eureka the other day, and as Sean said, they have a map to get to most of their anchors already. And, we need to start talking to public works folks about building those networks out in all of the cities along our corridors that don't have service, because in the next 4 years, service is coming, the pipe is coming. And will the communities be ready to take advantage of it as it's going through town is going to be one of the key issues.
And I think planning now, and getting ready to act when that happens is critical. And so, you look at those regions and you go, okay, here's what we want. We're not going to get it right away. And, Leanne, it's talking about, Shelter Cove and Whale Gulch. I mean, they have the wonderful thing about those is it's, nice and bucolic and sparsely populated, and it's a wonderful place to be. I grew up in Miranda, very, kind of like that, not as obviously remote as Whale Gulch, but for the most part, well, I was almost all, if not, the public funding of telecom and broadband, is dwarfed by the private funding. And so when you talk about Project Echo, and people are mad that we got a fiber to Taiwan before they got service in Whale Gulch, it's almost an apples and oranges discussion, right? The reason that is being, they're spending $7 billion to go across, or $5 billion or $7 billion, whatever it is, to go across the Pacific from Eureka to Singapore was not for the benefit of Eureka, right? It's a much bigger project plugging into a much bigger network. But there was a profit motive, right? Google is doing this because they make money. And that's always been the problem with rural broadband, right? The telecoms do two things, one of which is they control the area as much as they can by above board and below board and policy discussions and decisions that are being made at the state level and the federal level that really stifle competition in that area. They make the promises that they'll provide service in those areas in exchange for that sort of exclusive right to do that, and then they don't. And so there was a policy issue there that was broken, right? It basically allowed those telecoms to own an area and not provide service, or monkey with the definitions of what broadband service is and really put a very low threshold. And Connie and Sean have been very good on the policy side of like, okay, this is what we mean when we mean broadband, not 2 down and half up or a quarter up or something like that. We need real broadband, and we can't allow the telecoms to control who gets what. It's got to be, there's got to be some work done around policy around that to allow access. And so, and we fought that, when we were advocating for the second fiber, AT&T was out there saying, you don't need a second fiber. We just built this one. It's perfect. It's engineering fine. And we were saying, well, you don't know what you're talking about. And they were actually SBC at the time. And I mean, what really helped us was we had 4 outages in less than a year. And, and those outages don't come with any warning. And all of a sudden, nothing works. I mean, when we say nothing works, nothing worked. And, it's phone service, it was ATMs, it was credit card machines, it was 911 systems, it was the airport network, the SkyWest network not being able to connect. And so while those outages were tremendously inconvenient over the year, inconvenient personally and for the caused a lot of economic damage here. They were extremely convenient on making the case that maybe 2 fibers is probably better than 1, and of course 3 is better than 2, and 4 is better than 3, and et cetera, et cetera. So, so I think now it's like starting to plan. Like if we have these backbones coming through in 2 to 3 years, what are we doing now to prepare our regions or communities to go out and find the funding and the mechanisms by which we can invest in and be ready to plug right in when they come by, as opposed to waiting till it's done and then everybody's jumping on board.
Well, and also, on the issue, yes, they're gonna. I mean, and Andrew, I responded to you. And Dave Loya, I'll get back to the conversation about equity. But they will be offering what's called open access. These will be open access lines, so companies can come in and they can buy bulk service to either provide better connectivity or expand their networks. But we years ago had a training like, how do you become an ISP? How do you become your own internet service provider, or maybe become a provider for your neighborhood? And back in the day, there used to be a lot more local providers. Folks would get together and provide their own service because they didn't have another option, or municipal ISPs. Because now we have state laws that allow that to happen. So, there's opportunities for the community service districts along the routes to become internet providers. In many cases, they already have the ability to go to doors. They have the billing ability. Those conversations can happen in small bulks, and they can still buy in to provide service. There's a lot of data that says until you have like 7 providers with competition, that's when your quality really starts to improve and your price becomes reasonable, because you have so much competition in the market that they have to start thinking about. They have to start thinking about customer service and quality more.
Right.
So let me go to David.
Well, I just want to make a super quick point was, before we built the second fiber, if you were an internet service provider here and you wanted to connect to anything outside of the local network, or even if you wanted to connect within the local network, you had one place you could buy wholesale broadband, and that was AT&T or SBC. So, that's not regulated. The telecom pricing side wasn't regulated. They had to do a bunch of stuff for plain old, what we called POTS back in the day, plain old telephone service. But on telecom, they could charge whatever they want. So, you can think trying to negotiate with AT&T or SBC at the time and saying, hi, we want to come in and try to deploy a competing consumer-based service to you, but we need to buy fiber access for you, and they can charge whatever they want, and so so that Connie's point is right. We start getting competition here. It's like the airlines, right? One airline is going to charge whatever the hell it wants, and people are still going to use it because they need it, right? Well, the same is here. So I think that competition will help with that. And I'm sorry, I'll back to Connie or David.
Oh, okay. Well, no, I just want to hit David Loya. So, David, I mentioned the fact, our region also has the most folks that still don't have electricity to their house in the state of California. And so in some cases, this broadband projects might allow us to get both energy and broadband out to those communities at the same time. And so, all 8 tribes in the region will have access to fiber. Many of them have already taken advantage of a program at the public utilities commission to hire technical assistants to design their tribal networks. And so many of them are right now in the process of doing that. And they've also taken advantage of a program at the FCC that allows them to get spectrum, 2.5 gigahertz spectrum. So, and in addition, there are public funds that are just for tribes to interconnect. There's about $1 billion that's going just to interconnect tribes, because all over the country, tribal areas are the least connected areas in the country. You know, I think it was Peter Pennycamp years and years ago that told the Karuk tribe, you know what, sorry, you're going to have to do this yourself. And the Karuk tribe said, okay. And they put in their own network. Now you see the Yuroks doing it. You see Blue Lake is taking advantage of the loans. Rezagini Rancheria even got a grant to look at their network, and Bear River and Weots are considering it too. So they will be able to really dictate the amount of service that they're providing to their folks for both economic development opportunities and for connecting houses. The other thing we've worked on for equity is thanks to Frontier Communication, who at the very beginning of the pandemic was sending Chromebooks out to people in their territory. And I mentioned to them the fact that I didn't believe that tribal people were getting access to those Chromebooks. They decided, not even in their territory, all over the region, they gave more than 1,450 Chromebooks out to tribal youth. And so we are really intentionally working on equity with the tribes and making sure that they're not left behind. I was also able to buy 50 Chromebooks for some Latino community members as well in our region. So we're trying. When we first started this effort, well, not when we first started this effort. After the AT&T fiber came in, I went to Greg Foster and Tina Narrett, and our slogan was, do it or we'll do it for free. And it was ubiquitous broadband. And I swear to God, we are not stopping until everyone has a level of quality service to make them economically resilient in the community. We have so many local businesses that operate from home. We can't just think about getting broadband to Main Street here. We have to be able to have you be able to get the service you need in your community where you need it. And so that is our mission. And let me just also talk about Delaware County for a second, because we will, okay, we last chance grade. We've got to get last chance grade, and we are talking to Caltrans about making sure there's conduit in whatever they build in last chance grade, so we can get through the park and get up to east-west. When I say east-west, I'm talking Brookings to LA. That is the dream here. But we've got to work with Caltrans to make sure that we get that.
And that's really important. I mean, Caltrans, was the barrier, despite some of the words 20 years ago. What stopped the first fiber here was they wanted to charge $1.22 a foot for some access to get here in Southern Humboldt. And at the time, Pac Bell, which then became a SBC, which then became AT&T, balked. And so their Caltrans, I mean, one of the big things you're always looking for is right away, right? How to get from point A to point B. And here we have these corridors everywhere. And so, we got to keep the pressure on. And clearly they're better than they were back then, but it took Arnold Schwarzenegger doing a executive order, basically telling Caltrans they can't do certain things anymore related to blocking and trying to milk money out of the telecom infrastructure. So, we talk about, and Connie loves this, and Sean, the dig once policy, right? jurisdictions, when you tear up a road, throw in some conduit, right? Get all that infrastructure in place so it doesn't have to be dug up and done again, and you cut a lot of the cost out. And then when time comes, you can just blow fiber through these conduits that already exist. And that, if you already have a road or whatever, some sort of right of way torn up, get that conduit in there so that we can, when the time comes, you can just blow that fiber through, and it's a lot cheaper than retrenching a road and repaving it and all that. So part of it is just, think now about what you can do to reduce the cost of deployment, because that's expensive. I mean, these things are very expensive, and so municipalities, cities, counties, Caltrans, whatever else, can do a lot of front end to sort of reduce that cost by putting in that sort of whole, tubes, conduit everywhere, so that when time comes, boom, we can just blow fiber through it. A lot more efficient.
One of the things we've been talking about is getting communities to build open trench or to start open trench policies and other policies so that they are already building that conduit to the home. So all we need to do is have the companies pull the fiber there. That is, shout out to the city of Arcata that has an open trench policy, and Eureka's working on one, but that would really help with fiber to the home. I can tell you that some of the most remote communities are going to have an option for fiber to the home, but I doubt that you're going to see that in the big communities, just because of the amount of price of doing the digging. But if we are putting conduit in when we are going through, like if we had 20 years ago, put conduit in a lot of these projects, then we could talk fiber to the home a lot better. But I do know that some of the small cities, Frontier Communication, for example, is talking about fiber to the home projects with public funding. So look for them. Some are, Frontier's had 5 grants that they have been trying to get through the Public Utilities Commission since before COVID started. They turned them in May 2020. And they're still in review, which is also part of the reason why I'm focused on private funding now. It just moves faster. So let's see. If I missed your question or we missed your chat, please put it in again. There's so many of us, and it's wonderful that there are things that I'm sure I'm missing.
So Leanne, to your point of getting service out to those, Shelter Cove and everything else, if County Public Works is out there digging up a road, it's worth saying, hey, hey county, what are we doing to build this infrastructure? We don't know if and when it'll come, but it sure, we sure have a greater chance. We have conduit already running to these areas.
The other thing is, I do want to talk for a second about the overseas piece. Just like any road system, when you interconnect places, you start to have conversations with those places, and you start to realize what you have in common in those places. And one of the conversations that we're having is with Charles Darwin University in Darwin, Australia. And Charles Darwin and Alexander von Humboldt knew each other, which is sort of interesting. Alexander von Humboldt was older and wrote letters to Charles Darwin. So now we are talking to Charles Darwin University about becoming sister universities together. And some of you may have been paying attention to the submarine issue where we sold submarines to Australia. Well, in that same document, they talked about connecting to Project Echo and that strategically how that's important. So Project Echo, one of the things about Project Echo is it is a pathway that is purposely staying out of China. And so one of the other things is that it is going to make sure it doesn't have any Chinese components, and it's going to, it has a desire to make sure that we can educate Indigenous people to handle the subsea station landing sites, so we don't have to contract those sites with China. So there's active conversations happening with HSU, College of the Redwoods, and Charles Darwin and other universities on the other side about how we can up the amount of computer science education we're doing, not only to help our own region, but also to work with Indigenous folks in that region. Charles Darwin is putting in the largest microgrid with the largest transmission line in the world. They're building a microgrid that's going to have connections to Sydney and to Malaysia. They have major solar arrays. They're looking at the same food programs. They're trying to do fire, fire resiliency work. So they are so excited about partnering with us that they have decided they're all coming out here in February to check out the North Coast. There's opportunities for the dairy industry in that, like, could we use our interconnections to sell some of our other goods and services now that we're going to have this line here? So it's not just economic resiliency from using the cable. Other businesses, because we're going to have this connection, are going to be able to take advantage of it. Imagine our breweries maybe taking advantage of this line and selling it. So it gives us a whole new branding opportunity. So let's see. I'll stop there. Greg, are we missing any questions here?
One of them is there community resistance to some of this, especially Project Echo? And we noted earlier that there was some concern around the fishing industry, whether or not the actual infrastructure of it under the surface of the sea might interfere with some of the fishing access out there. And that was pretty much dealt with through the environmental documents and the permit with the Coastal Commission, and that's why they approved it. But I haven't heard a lot of community resistance or concern about it, if for no other reason, probably that a lot of people may not even know about it still. And B, the nice thing about these fiber projects is they tend to be underground and buried, so no one sees them. And so, a lot of people's opposition to these projects are because it affects them directly and negatively. And in this case, it really doesn't. I mean, they're doing horizontal boring under the streets and all this good stuff. So there's minimal sort of environmental disturbance and neighborhood disturbance that's going on as a result. Now,
and Nancy, like I said, there is an engaged community effort stakeholder group that meets almost every other Wednesday, and it includes some of the tribes in it. And because we've been advocating for broadband for 20 years, it's not like a fish project that just sort of, isn't something. This has been a community begging effort. So it's sort of different than the other efforts. This isn't an external group that's just come in and landed here. We actually went out and sought a partnership with folks, and we've spent 20 years doing it. So that's the difference, I think, Nancy, from why we're saying that there's not as much opposition. This is the 7th consortia we have sought to get across 299. So we have actively been begging other companies to come in here. This whole effort has an equity lens, as I said earlier. So this isn't hi, we're some company and we've decided to come to your town and let's permit you. We are literally actively working on the permits. We're at the hearings. We are engaged every day. I have pictures of me in hard hats. We are on the ground with these guys, hugging and falling in love with each other.
Well, and and on the Highway 36 project, it was that equity and access that really got that funded. So when we were advocating for it over here at REDEC, we really were about redundancy to the main economic core of Humboldt County. And it's not that we didn't care about access to broadband along the route, but our main priority was we need to figure out how to really keep our economic base stable. But it was the fact that and with partnership with 101 Netlink, that they were able to provide broadband access to small communities along the Highway 36 route. That really made the difference because, Connie worked hard with IP Networks and others to get funding from the PUC through the California Advanced Services Fund to build that fiber. So while it was like, oh, great, we just got a second fiber connection, that's a great middle mile and alternative path and redundancy to the Bay Area of Humboldt. What it really also did, and what was appealing to the PUC, was that it allowed broadband access to small communities along the corridor between here and Cottonwood, right? And so that was so two great benefits there, right?
Hey,
and
could I,
for it.
Sorry, this is Sean. Could I just chime in real quick? It wasn't that long ago that Humboldt County Sheriff declared an emergency based on communication system failures that were caused by power outages that weren't even in Humboldt County. So I think the other really interesting aspect of this work is there's been an evolution in the way we design our own local networks to be island, almost like energy, right? We need to island our broadband networks in a way, or create redundant, resilient paths, and really design our communication system. So I think we learned, for example, that a 911 call from parts of the county was leaving the county, going all the way, to Cottonwood, and then coming back to the sheriff's office. And so any failure along that route meant you couldn't complete a 911 call. So we have really a opportunity to redesign the whole local communications infrastructure to meet local needs at the same time that we build these connections to the world outside. So I think that's something we're super excited about. And I think the leadership that we see, over time really counts and makes Humboldt an opportune place for that vision to unfold.
Hey, Greg, I know we said I wasn't going to do this, but let me show a few pictures because I just think it makes it real.
Go for it. Yeah.
I'm going to share screen just so you can see. I just pulled a few pictures here, and let's see if I can blow them up too. This is the ship, the Sagaro, and it is actually off our coast right now, laying fiber 30 miles out. Well, if the seas are good today. And here is the Google Facebook team that is working on it with a company called NEC. And you might notice Zaretti Gooseby's in the middle. He's a consultant for Google right now. So this is them standing out in front of the ship. And maybe you saw the ship off our coast, or you can see it from the top of Humboldt Hill. Yeah, it's just out there. There's an app also where you can follow the ship as it's going around. Here is the actual moment when the subsea cable actually came to shore. Yes, it's a Korean ship. No, it's got crews from all over Asia. So there's 7 Korean people on there. I'm answering the chat as I'm talking here. So this is the moment. It happened Sunday around 6 p.m. That we actually got the cable on shore. So here is what the plow looks like, folks. And this is on the ship. And this bottom part digs, and then the top part buries it on the ocean floor. And here is the command center. You can see me standing on the command center, and my assistant Kate is about to sit in the captain's chair there on the ship. And these are the repeater coils. This is how they power the subsea cable. They put one of these about every 80 kilometers to power the ship. Power the cable as it's going across there. So yeah, it's happening right now. I've got more photos I could bore you to death with, but but some folks are on our call, but feel free to reach out to me and I'll bore you with hundreds of photos, because it's exciting for those of us who've been working on this for 20, I keep saying 20 years, Greg, but I actually think it's more. I know I didn't have a gray hair in my head when I first heard the words broadband. Yeah, this is it. Vacation slideshows. I'll put some of them up on my Facebook or Twitter too as well. But anyway, it's for those of you who are thinking 2023 is a long time. It is tomorrow. And so it's tomorrow, guys. We've got to be ready to take advantage of this. And so start thinking about other companies. Greg, I'm going to kick it back to you. We got about 8 minutes left, and I'm going to get up some more pictures because I'm getting good feedback. But go ahead. Go ahead and talk, and I'll show you guys some more pictures.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what we're seeing here is that, and what we wanted to sort of talk about is, I mean, it's very cool to see the pictures, and, I quite honestly, when we started this literally 20 years ago, really complaining about our lack of access and trying to change projects and learning about it. I mean, I don't think we had any idea that we would be in this position going forward. And so now I think it's really incumbent among all communities to figure out, okay, we're not just about broadband deployment now, but we need to look at, okay, so now what do we do in terms of making sure we lock in those benefits to us, whether it's business attraction or creating municipal networks or everything else. And so that takes a whole different level of planning. Quite honestly, it was easy for some of us to sort of conceive all of this because we were just like, okay, what do we want? I want a fiber optic line going this way, and I want a fiber optic line going that way, and I want a fiber optic line going that way. Well, that's okay. That's an easy concept to get, right? And you can go after it. But now it's like, okay, now we have all that. What are we doing in our economic development planning? And that's really broad, right? Because we're talking about what I'm saying to Leanne in the chat. Okay, so what's the road construction schedule for public works over the next 10 years, if there is one, right? So what are the opportunities to start pushing out infrastructure, right? And then, where, for me at the, again, I'm a big booster of the airport. So, as soon as Josh showed that picture from Vero Networks on a call and it shows that yellow line going right by the airport, I'm thinking, well, geez, Steve Mosier, who's a private developer, owns this big business park next to the airport. So what are we doing to push conduit and up there? What can he do? What is he willing to invest in? We have the airport master plan coming. So what are we doing in terms of the airport master plan and maybe networking it all through there? It may be dark, but it's there, right? It becomes an attractant. And so, you all of a sudden you start thinking about, oh, we want to get this infrastructure everywhere. And then we need the policies and programs in place that allow those benefits to accrue to everybody. And, Sean and Connie do a lot of that kind of work. I support it. It's not quite in my wheelhouse as an economic developer. It's certainly in my wheelhouse as a caring individual. But, I'm looking at, okay, I can now offer, if someone's interested in expanding or locating to Humboldt County, I can tell them things now that I couldn't tell them before. Again, that's what I started with. Oh yeah, you can come do business here, but you got to overcome bad broadband, bad airport, bad, blah, 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 blah. Now I can say, yeah, you can come do business here. You've got 4 airlines and 7 destinations. We hope to be 5 airlines and 8 destinations by next summer. We have a robust broadband infrastructure. You can connect through all these different companies now that are providing internet service, because we have these data centers where they can plug in and do their business to provide the thing. We have this robust educational network that's being built through CNIC and Humboldt State and the Humboldt County Office of Education. We might have the Resort Improvement District working with I don't know, 101 Netlink or other providers to do this, high-speed internet network out at Shelter Cove. Who knows what? But now we're making these offers, which are great. We couldn't do it before. It was like, oh yeah, don't try to call outside of Humboldt County when it's raining. Much different. It feels like, for me, who's been, Connie and others have been doing it for so long, it doesn't seem like that long since we were fighting the battle, but it was 20 years. I mean, it's been 2 decades, and it's really exciting. It's really exciting. But it's up to us now to figure out really how to take advantage of that. And it's by looking at things we're not used to looking at right now, right?
Right. Okay, I'm going to show you one more really fun picture before before we call it quits here. This is what 4,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable look like on a ship. So this ship has the ability to lay cable on the ocean floor for about halfway across the ocean. So it will drop the cable there, and someone else can come and pick it up and take it the rest of the way. This is here. Let me see if I can blow this up bigger. Oh man. It's my button to blow things up disappeared, but this is me on the deck looking at the submarine is the yellow, and the plow is over here, that and there's a big crane that drops the plow onto the ocean floor for it to plow. And I always like to end with this picture because I thought it was so fun. This was over near the captain's ship. And if you notice, it says, if I could blow it up, I'm sorry, I can't seem to find where to blow this thing up. But my blow up button disappeared. But let's see if I bring it up again, if I can do it. But anyway, it says $7 per person to go to Starbucks because they were stuck for 10 days waiting for the sea to be calm enough to plow. So they did a lot of taxi cabs to Target and Starbucks and other places. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming, and I need to stop sharing now. And boy, we didn't think we could fill an hour, Greg, but we managed to do it.
We had a session earlier on aviation this morning, and our main speaker is ironically stuck in an airplane because of a screw up, and so we were worried about filling an hour and a half, and we had no problem. I can talk, so that's just the way it is.
So hey, thanks for coming. And if you guys have any questions or you want to join our group, send us a note. We'll add you to the mailing list. Certainly, I hope we can get a list of everybody who attended today, because we are going to start Redwood Technology Consortium up again. And our first meeting, we'll talk about all the deployment we know about in the region, and then we're going to create a network of people who are interested in broadband. That we'll virtually meet throughout the region. So
we do have a broadband call that's every Wednesday.
Every other Wednesday,
excuse me, at 11 o'clock. And if you want to send me, I can send you the invite to the Zoom. So email me at Greg with 2 G's at rredc.com, and I will put it in the chat. And then we'll get you on that Zoom invite, and you can participate every other week.
And I hope you all have a great rest of the conference. Please, if you have any other questions, reach out. We're always willing to talk broadband day and night.
Or airports.
Or airports, or climate change, or microgrids, or any other subject you want to talk about. Appreciate you all. Thanks.
Thank you all.